You know what happens when a lion is attacked by hyenas? The lion doesn't bark back. The lion doesn't gather other lions to gossip about the hyenas. The lion simply walks away, and that walk, that silent, dignified departure, that's what haunts the hyenas forever. Because deep down, those hyenas know they just disrespected royalty, and royalty didn't even consider them worthy of a response. There's a weapon you carry that you don't even know you possess. It's not in your words. It's not in your ability to clap back or your capacity to defend yourself. It's in your silence. But not just any silence. It's the silence that comes after you've been disrespected, undermined, betrayed, or counted out. That silence is not weakness. That silence is a declaration. And tonight, I need you to understand something that will change the trajectory of your life. Your silence after the disrespect is absolutely killing them. Let me take you somewhere. There was a man I heard about who built a business from nothing. Started in his garage with an idea, a laptop, and more faith than funding. For years, people laughed. His relatives would gather at family functions and whisper. His old classmates would see his social media posts about his dreams and screenshot them to mock in group chats. He thinks he's somebody. They would say, wait until reality hits him. The disrespect was constant. It was intentional. It was designed to break him. But here's what they didn't expect. He never responded. Not once. No long posts explaining himself. No confrontations at family gatherings. No subliminal messages on social media. He just kept building. Every insult became fuel. Every mockery became a brick in his foundation. And 5 years later, that business was worth millions. The same people who laughed, they started calling, sending messages. I always believed in you, bro. We should work together. I knew you had it in you. And you know what he did? He read every message and he never responded to a single one. That silence, that deliberate, powerful silence, it was his final statement. He said, I don't owe you an explanation. I don't owe you my energy. I don't even owe you my anger. And that silence, it destroyed them more than any words ever could. See, we live in a generation that has been trained to react. Somebody offends you online, respond immediately. Somebody disrespects you, let them know who they are dealing with. Somebody undermines your progress, gather witnesses and defend yourself. We've been conditioned to believe that silence means weakness, that not responding means they won, that walking away means they got the better of us. But I'm here to flip that narrative completely upside down. Your silence is not surrender. Your silence is strategy. When you understand the spiritual dynamics of reaction versus response, you realize that every time you react in anger, in hurt, in defense, you're actually giving away your power. You're handing them the remote control to your emotions. You're saying, here, you dictate how I feel today. You determine my peace. You control my narrative. But when you choose silence, when you receive the disrespect and you simply smile, pray internally, and keep moving, you've just retained all the power. You've made a statement that's louder than any comeback. You've declared, you're not important enough to disrupt my peace. You're not significant enough to derail my purpose. You're not worthy of my energy. There's a story I came across about a young woman who worked in a corporate environment, brilliant mind, exceptional work ethic. But there was a colleague, let's call her Rachel, who made it her personal mission to undermine everything this young woman did. In meetings, Rachel would take credit for her ideas. In emails, Rachel would subtly question her competence. In conversations with superiors, Rachel would plant seeds of doubt about her capabilities. For months, this young woman endured it. People kept telling her, say something. Defend yourself, report her. Don't let her get away with it. But something inside her said, not yet. Stay silent. Keep walking. It didn't make sense to anyone watching. It looked like weakness. It appeared like she was being trampled on. But here's what nobody saw. While Rachel was busy scheming and plotting, this young woman was documenting everything, improving her skills, building relationships with key stakeholders, and delivering results that spoke louder than any defense could. She wasn't silent because she was scared. She was silent because she was strategic. Then one day, the company was restructuring. They were looking for someone to lead a new high-profile division. Rachel had positioned herself as the obvious choice. She had politicked, networked, and maneuvered herself into what she thought was a guaranteed promotion. The announcement came. The young woman got the position. And Rachel, she wasn't just passed over. She was asked to report to the very person she had spent months trying to destroy. That silence, that calculated, faith-filled silence, it was the setup for divine vindication. And the pain Rachel felt in that moment was far greater than any argument, any confrontation, any clap back could have ever delivered. You see, when people disrespect you, they are expecting a reaction. They want the fight. They want the drama. They want to see you shaken, to see you bothered, to see you lose your composure. Because as long as you're reacting, they're in control. As long as you're defending, they're dictating. As long as you're explaining, they're winning. But when you meet their disrespect with silence, when you absorb their mockery and simply keep progressing, when you hear their rumors and don't even address them, you've just shifted the entire dynamic. Because now they are left with their words, their actions, and their conscience. And trust me, that combination is a torment they never anticipated. I need you to understand something profound. Silence is not passivity. Silence is not weakness. Silence is the posture of the powerful. It's the stance of those who know their worth isn't up for debate. It's the position of those who understand that some battles are won without a single word spoken. Think about the greatest moments of power in history. When a king enters a room, he doesn't announce himself. His presence does. When a lion appears in the wilderness, it doesn't roar to prove he's a lion. The other animals already know. When an eagle soars, it doesn't explain to the chickens why it's flying. It just flies and the chickens watch from below, unable to comprehend that dimension. Your silence after disrespect operates in the same realm. It's a demonstration of a dimension that your disrespecters cannot access. They operate in the realm of pettiness, reaction, and insecurity. You operate in the realm of purpose, vision, and divine assignment. And when you refuse to descend to their level, when you refuse to engage in their arena, when you refuse to validate their attack with a response, you've just shown them that you're playing a completely different game. There was a man in ancient times who was betrayed by his own brothers. They stripped him, threw him in a pit, and sold him into slavery. Imagine that level of disrespect. These weren't strangers. These were his own bloodline. And for years, he could have been consumed by bitterness. He could have spent his days plotting revenge. He could have told everyone who would listen about what his brothers did to him. But he didn't. He stayed silent. He walked in silence. He suffered in silence. He rose in silence. And when the day came that his brothers stood before him in need, he had the power to destroy them. He had the platform to expose them. He had the authority to make them pay for every ounce of pain they caused him. And what did he do? He wept. He forgave. He provided. And in that moment, his silence through all those years became the most powerful sermon of his life. His brothers were undone, not by his revenge, but by his grace. Not by his words, but by his character. Not by his retaliation, but by his silence that had transformed him into something they could no longer recognize. That's what your silence does. It transforms you while it torments them. While they are waiting for your reaction, you're being refined. While they are expecting your defense, you're being developed. While they are anticipating your breakdown, you're being built up. And when you emerge, and trust me, you will emerge, they won't even recognize the version of you that comes out of that season. Your silence is doing work in the spiritual realm that you cannot see in the natural realm. Every time you choose not to respond to disrespect, you're making a deposit in a heavenly account. Every time you absorb mockery without retaliation, You're storing up vindication that will manifest at the appointed time. Every time you walk away from an argument, you could win. You're winning a war in dimensions they don't even know exist. But here's what I need you to hear clearly. This silence I'm talking about is not the silence of cowardice. It's not the silence of someone who has no voice. It's not the silence of someone who is suppressing their pain and pretending everything is fine. No, this is the silence of spiritual maturity. This is the silence of someone who knows their worth. This is the silence of someone who understands that some people don't deserve access to their energy. This is the silence that says, I could respond, but I'm choosing not to. This is the silence that declares, I could defend myself, but my work will speak for me. This is the silence that announces, I could destroy you with my words, but I rather pray for you instead. And that kind of silence is lethal to your enemies, because they can handle your anger. They are prepared for your defense. They're ready for your retaliation, but they have no defense against your peace. They have no comeback for your silence. They have no strategy against your spiritual maturity. When you remain silent after disrespect, you force them to sit with their own toxicity. You force them to marinate in their own negativity. You force them to confront the ugliness of their own actions without the distraction of your reaction. And that confrontation with themselves, that's a punishment far worse than anything you could say or do to them. I've watched this principle play out over and over again. The person who gossips about you then has to watch you succeed while they are still stuck. The colleague who undermines you then has to present to the board that just promoted you. The friend who betrayed you then has to see you thriving while their life is falling apart. The family member who counted you out then has to celebrate your wins at gatherings while dealing with their own failures. Your silence doesn't just kill them. It haunts them. It follows them. It becomes the soundtrack to their regret. Because every time they see you winning, they remember what they said. Every time they watch you progressing, they recall what they did. Every time they witness you being blessed, they are confronted with the disrespect they displayed. And that confrontation, that unavoidable, persistent confrontation, it becomes their prison. I want to tell you about something that happened in a small village where everyone knew everyone's business. There was a young man who worked as a carpenter's apprentice. Nothing fancy, nothing impressive by society standards. But he had a gift, an extraordinary ability to create furniture that was not just functional, but art. Every piece he touched became something beautiful. Now, in this same village was a master craftsman who had built his reputation over decades. When he saw these young apprentices work, something twisted inside him. Not admiration, not pride, but envy. And that envy turned into a campaign of destruction. The master craftsman began telling anyone who would listen that the young man was stealing designs, using inferior materials, deceiving customers. The rumors spread like wildfire. Orders stopped coming. People who had praised the young man's work suddenly looked at him with suspicion. His reputation was being destroyed by lies he never saw coming. And everyone, his mother, his friends, his supporters, they all said the same thing. Defend yourself, clear your name, confront him, sue him, do something. But the young man did something that confused everyone. He stopped taking local orders altogether. He packed up his tools, rented a small workshop on the outskirts of town, and started creating pieces, not for the local market, but for exhibitions in the capital city. He worked in complete silence. No social media updates. No explanations. No defenses. Just work. Pure, focused, excellent work. 2 years passed. In those 2 years, the master craftsman continued to enjoy his local fame, believing he had successfully eliminated his competition. But then something happened that he never anticipated. The young man's work was featured in the National Museum. His pieces were being acquired by collectors. His name was becoming known, not in the village, but in the entire country. And when a documentary was made about emerging artists, There he was, the young carpenter from the small village who had been called a fraud. The day that documentary aired, the master craftsman's world collapsed. Not because the young man mentioned him, not because there was any revenge or exposure, but because the young man's excellence made the master craftsman's mediocrity undeniable. Orders that used to come to the master craftsman started redirecting to representatives of the young man. People who had believed the rumors felt foolish. The master craftsman's own apprentices started questioning why they were learning from him when there was clearly a better craftsman who came from the same village. The young man never spoke a word against the master craftsman, never told his side of the story, never exposed the lies, never sought an apology. His furniture spoke, his success spoke, his character spoke. And that speech, that silent, powerful speech, it didn't just kill the master craftsman's credibility, it buried it. This is what I'm trying to help you see. When you're operating in purpose, when you're walking in your calling, when you're aligned with your assignment, your silence after disrespect becomes a weapon they have no defense against. Because you're not fighting in the natural realm, you're fighting in the spiritual realm. And in that realm, excellence is louder than explanation. Character is more powerful than confrontation. Results speak louder than rebuttals. But let me tell you where most people miss it. They stay silent initially, but they are waiting. They are keeping score. They are building a case. They are planning for the day when they'll finally get to say, see, I told you so. Look at me now. Remember when you doubted me? And the moment they do that, they've just canceled out the power of their silence, because their silence wasn't rooted in maturity. It was rooted in delayed revenge. True silence, the kind that kills them, is not strategic positioning for future gloating. It's genuine release. It's authentic forgiveness. It's sincere detachment from the need for them to acknowledge their error. When you can succeed and not need them to see it, when you can win and not need them to admit they were wrong, when you can be vindicated and not need them to apologize, that's when you've accessed the kind of silence that doesn't just impact them, it transforms you. There's a woman I know who experienced one of the most public betrayals I've ever witnessed. Her business partner, someone she trusted like family, didn't just leave the company. She left and took clients, copied the business model, and started a competing firm. Then she went further. She told those clients lies about why she left, painting this woman as unethical, difficult, and incompetent. The natural response would be lawsuits, public statements, social media posts, exposing the truth. Everyone advised her to fight back, to protect her reputation, to make sure everyone knew what really happened. But she made a decision that shocked everyone around her. She said, I'm going to let my work defend me, and I'm going to pray for her freedom. She didn't issue a single statement. She didn't address any rumors. She didn't even correct people who came to her with the lies they'd heard. She just said, thank you for checking on me, and kept building. More than that, when opportunities came to speak negatively about her former partner, even in private, she refused. When people tried to give her updates about how the competing firm was doing, she politely changed the subject. 3 years later, the competing firm collapsed. Not because this woman did anything against it, not because she sabotaged it, not because she exposed anything. It collapsed under the weight of its own dysfunction. The very character flaws that caused the betrayal eventually destroyed the business that was built on betrayal. Meanwhile, the woman's company had tripled in size. Her reputation had become unshakable. And her peace, it was untouchable. When the former partner reached out years later with an apology, you know what the woman said? I forgave you the day it happened. I've been praying for you ever since. That response destroyed the former partner more than any revenge could have, because she realized she had been at war with someone who wasn't even fighting back. She had been haunted by guilt while the woman she wronged had been walking in peace. Your silence after disrespect has to be rooted in something deeper than strategy. It has to be anchored in genuine peace. Because people can sense the difference between someone who is silent because they are plotting and someone who is silent because they are free. The first type of silence is still bondage. You're still controlled by what they did, still defined by their disrespect, still living in reaction to their actions. The second type of silence is liberation. You've released them, released the offense, released the need for vindication. And here's the mystery. When you reach that second type of silence, when you are genuinely free, that's when the vindication comes. Anyway, not because you are seeking it, but because that's how spiritual laws work. The universe, or if I can say it this way, the divine order of things has a way of balancing accounts. When you release your right to revenge, you activate a higher court. When you stop defending yourself, heaven starts defending you. When you cease from your own efforts to vindicate yourself, divine vindication begins to manifest. I've seen this play out in the life of a young teacher who was falsely accused by a group of parents. They claimed she was discriminating against their children, treating them unfairly, grading them harshly because of their background. The accusations went to the school board. There were meetings, investigations, whispers in the community. Her name was being dragged through the mud. She could have fought hard. She could have exposed those parents' actual motives. Jealousy over the attention she gave to other students. Frustration that their children weren't getting special treatment. Anger that she held all students to the same high standards. She had evidence. She had witnesses. She had everything she needed to clear her name aggressively. But instead, she simply cooperated with the investigation, answered questions honestly, and continued teaching with the same excellence and love. She didn't campaign for her innocence. She didn't lobby supporters. She didn't blast social media with her side of the story. She just showed up every day and did what she was called to do, teach with passion and pour into every student who entered her classroom. The investigation cleared her completely. But that's not even the powerful part. What happened next was extraordinary. One by one, students started speaking up, not because she asked them to, not because anyone prompted them, but because they couldn't stay silent. While someone who had changed their lives was being attacked, students she had taught years ago wrote letters to the board. Parents whose children had struggled until they got to her class shared testimonies. Colleagues who had witnessed her character spoke up. By the time it was over, she didn't just get cleared, she got honored. The school board issued a public apology. The community rallied around her. And those parents who made the accusations, they couldn't show their faces at school events anymore. Not because anyone confronted them, but because the truth, revealed through the teacher's silence and supported by the voices of those she had impacted, was so overwhelming that their lives became indefensible. Her silence didn't make her invisible. It made her invincible. Because while they were busy constructing accusations, she was busy constructing a legacy. While they were focused on tearing her down, she was focused on building students up. While they were obsessed with her, she was obsessed with her purpose. This is the dimension I need you to access. When you're so consumed with where you are going that you have no energy for where you've been hurt. When you're so focused on what you are building that you have no time for what they are saying. When you're so committed to your purpose that you have no space for their pettiness. But I want to address something important. Some of you are thinking, but doesn't silence enable bad behavior? Doesn't it let them get away with it? Shouldn't wrong be confronted? And you're not completely wrong. There's a difference between wisdom-filled silence and fear-based suppression. There's a difference between strategic restraint and unhealthy avoidance. If someone is actively harming others, if there's abuse, if there's injustice that needs to be addressed for the protection of the vulnerable, speak. That's not the silence I'm talking about. I'm talking about the personal disrespects, the undermining, the mockery, the betrayals, the slights, the dismissals, the things people do to try to diminish you, discourage you, or derail you. Those are the moments where your silence becomes your strength. There's a story of a young entrepreneur who pitched his business idea to a room full of investors. One investor, a particularly arrogant man, didn't just reject the pitch. He mocked it in front of everyone, called it naive, poorly thought out, destined for failure. The young entrepreneur stood there, absorbed every word, thanked the room for their time, and left. Everyone expected him to be crushed. But something interesting happened. That mockery became fuel. Every time he wanted to quit, he remembered that room. Every time the business got hard, he thought about that investor's words, but he never spoke about it publicly. He never named the investor. He never told the story to gain sympathy. He just walked. 5 years later, that business had revolutionized its industry. It was worth hundreds of millions. And that same investor who mocked him, he tried to get a meeting, sent emails, made calls, wanted to invest, wanted to partner. The entrepreneur's assistant called back with a simple message he respectfully declines. No explanation. No, remember when you mocked me? No, you said my idea would fail. Just a polite decline. And that according to people who knew the investor, haunted him more than any public shaming could have. Because he had to live with the knowledge that he had rejected a generational opportunity because of his own arrogance. And the person he wronged didn't even consider him worthy of an explanation for the rejection. That's the power of sustained silence. It's not about one moment. It's about a lifestyle. It's about becoming the kind of person who doesn't need to announce their wins, doesn't need to remind people of their wrongs, doesn't need validation from those who invalidated them. You just live, grow, succeed, and let your life be the statement. As we close, I want you to make a decision right now. Whatever disrespect you're carrying, whatever betrayal you're holding on to, whatever mockery is replaying in your mind, release it. Not because they deserve your forgiveness, but because you deserve your freedom. Not because what they did was okay, but because your future is too important to be held hostage by your past. Your silence is not weakness, it's warfare. It's a weapon formed in the furnace of spiritual maturity and unleashed through the discipline of self-control. When you master your mouth, you master your moment. When you control your responses, you control your results. When you choose peace over pettiness, you choose power over powerlessness. Let them wonder why you're not bothered. Let them question why you're still peaceful. Let them be confused by your continued success. Let them be tormented by their own conscience as they watch you thrive. Your silence combined with your progress is the most powerful sermon you ever preach. Remember this. The lion doesn't lose sleep over the opinion of sheep. The eagle doesn't explain to chickens why it flies. The oak tree doesn't argue with the wind. And you don't owe explanations to those who are committed to misunderstanding you. Walk in your purpose, operate in your calling, execute your vision, and let your silence after their disrespect be the sound that echoes in their conscience forever. Not because you are trying to hurt them, but because you are too busy becoming who you're destined to be. Your silence is killing them, and your success will bury the memory of their disrespect, not with bitterness, but with the undeniable evidence that what they said about you had no power over what heaven said about you. Now go. Build in silence. Succeed in silence. Win in silence. And let them discover your greatness when it's too late to be part of it.